In the winter of 45, the front was a ledger of losses. The Germans, ragged but relentless, pushed east from the Rhine, their panzers ghosts in the mist, infantry huddled in greatcoats that smelled of defeat and diesel. They called it the Colmar Pocket, a bulge in the line where 30,000 Wehrmacht troops clawed for breathing room for a miracle that would never come. Company B, 3rd Battalion, 15th Infantry Regiment, held the ridge at Holtzwihr. 19 men, 19 souls against 200, outnumbered 10-1. The math was merciless. But math, as the Germans would learn, could be rewritten by a single machine, a foxhole's edge. Lieutenant Audie Murphy, 19 years old, Texas drawl sharp as barbed wire, peers through binoculars smeared with frost. His face is boyish yet etched, eyes like polished flint, jaw set against the chill. Around him, GIs hunker low, favoured James Kelly nursing a jammed Garand, sank Earl Gerstner counting clips by feel. The air hums with tension, the kind that coils in your gut before the first shot. Murphy's Company B has been chewed up, half the platoon gone to mines and mortars the day before. Now, the horizon stirs. Dark shapes emerge from the snow, German half-tracks, MG-42s slung like scythes, SS Panzergrenadiers in Feldgrau, moving with the precision of men who have danced this dance too long. Murphy, low, urgent, to his radio man. "Get me battalion, tell 'em we're about to eat steel, and pray the Krauts forgot their coffee." The radio man nods, fingers numb on the handset. Static hisses back, no reply. The Germans advance, a gray tide swelling, their officers barking in clipped gutturals. Cut to Oberleutnant Hans Vogel, 32, a Berliner with an iron cross pinned like a scar, glassing the American line from 400 yards. His company, veterans of the Eastern Front, fans out, confident in the blitz of numbers. They've cracked worse nuts in the snows of Stalingrad. Movement is life, he thinks. Flank, envelop, break. The Americans are brittle, exposed. Escape? For the victors, always. War is a geometry of motion. The Germans mastered it, the Schwerpunkt, the feint, the killing angle. At Holtzwihr they saw angles everywhere, soft earth for tracks, blind spots in the ridge, the promise of a rout by dusk. But geometry has a flaw. It assumes the enemy bends to lines. It forgets the tools that draw no lines at all. That bends space itself. The first burst cracks the silence. An MG-42, its sewing machine chatter ripping through the flakes. Bullets whip past Murphy's foxhole, stitching dirt into fountains. Men scream. Kelly takes one in the shoulder, rolls into the snow red as holly. Gerstner returns fire, his bar barking short and futile. The half-tracks grind closer, 300 yards now, their 20mm cannons swiveling like hungry eyes. Mortars whisper overhead, blooming black and orange on the ridge. Company B fractures, men fall back, or don't fall at all. Murphy stands, M1 carbine in hand, popping shots that feel like pebbles against an avalanche. Gerstner, yelling over the din, blood on his lip from a shattered tooth. "Lieutenant, we gotta pull back, they're all over us." Murphy, eyes locked forward. "Pull back? To where, Sergeant?" "That ain't a line, it's a goddamn noose. Hold." But holding is illusion. The M10 tank destroyer, their iron anchor, erupts in flame. A panzer round punches its flank, fuel spilling like black blood. The crew bails, shadows scrambling into the white. The beast burns, a pyre 200 yards from the foxholes, its turret askew. Germans cheer, a guttural wave, victory's first taste. Vogel smiles thinly, adjusting his scarf. The Americans break now, or they die. Audie Murphy was no Superman. He was 5'5", 110 pounds soaking wet, a farm boy from Kingston Springs who enlisted because the world was ending and he hated sitting still. Medals? He'd earned 33 by war's close, but here, in the smoke of Holtzwihr, he was just a lieutenant with a choice: run or rage. He chose the fire, climbed the burning M10 like it was a ladder to hell, carbine slung, ignoring the heat that blistered his gloves. The 50 cal waited there, bolted to the turret ring. A Browning M2HB, heavy-barreled Sentinel, its receiver a slab of machined hate, 84 pounds of brass and steel that laughed at recoil. Close up, Murphy's hands, calloused and quick, yank the charging handle. The gun coughs awake, a metallic belch, deeper than thunder, vibrating bone. The first burst, 12 rounds, 50 API tracers, igniting the air like comets. They arc lazy, then vicious, slamming into the lead half-track at 600 yards. Metal shreds, the driver slumps, vehicle slewing into a ditch. Germans dive, but there's no cover. The ridge is naked, the snow a mirror for death. Vogel, into his field phone, voice cracking for the first time. Halt! Flank left, draw their fire, schnell! His men pivot, but the 50 doesn't care for flanks. Its rhythm is metronomic, 450 to 600 rounds per minute, selectable, relentless. Murphy traverses the turret. The guns recoil a lover's nudge, 45 foot-pounds absorbed by the mount, translated to pure momentum. Casings eject in brass rain, pinging hot on the M10's deck, each one a spent prayer. The Germans bunch, then scatter. A squad leader falls, helmet pulped at 800 yards, the round's 20,300 foot-pounds of muzzle energy turning tactics to tissue. The Browning M250 caliber machine gun wasn't born for moments like this. Designed in 1918 by John Moses Browning, a Utah gunsmith who saw war as equations solved in lead, it was meant for aircraft, anti-balloon fire in the Great War's dogfights. But by 44, it was everywhere. Water-cooled ancestor to this air-cooled beast, firing .50 BMG Browning machine gun cartridge, 660 grains of boat-tailed fury at Mach 3. Range, effective to 2,000 yards, lethal beyond. It punched light armor, shredded engines, turned flesh to fog. Not with finesse, but with finality. One gun, one man, against 200. And the Germans froze not from cold but from the dawning. This wasn't fire. This was a wall. Murphy, over the gun's dying echo, hoarse to the wind. Come on, you bastards, that's all you got. The M10 gutters out, flames licking Murphy's boots. He slides down, scorched but standing, as medics swarm. Battalion arrives at last, tanks rumbling like applause. Murphy waves off the stretcher, eyes on the horizon. Empty now. Silent. But the silence isn't peace. It's the pause before the next calculation. A German aid station, miles back. Vogel, bandaged, stares at a field report. His adjutant, a boy of 18, whispers of the one man on the burning tank. Vogel laughs, bitter, then stops. The sound replays in his mind, not the explosions but the deep rhythmic cough. Ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum, like a heartbeat, unhurried, unyielding. Words spread like shrapnel. The kid who held a company with a 50. Medal of Honor, front page ink from New York to London. For the Americans it was legend, a talisman against the tide. For the Germans, a sentence. They'd faced the Russian Katyushas, the British Typhoons, but this, a single gun, mocking their maneuvers. It didn't chase, it waited, and in its shadow, escape twisted into trap. The 50 cal wasn't savior or curse alone, it was both, the line between living and legend, drawn in brass. In war's cruel algebra, men are variables, brave, broken, brief. Machines, they are constants. Unmoved by cold, by doubt, by the human plea for quarter. At Holtzwihr, Audie Murphy pulled the trigger. But it was the gun that pulled the war closer. For the Germans, it wasn't a weapon anymore. It was the sound of something they couldn't escape. War devours dreams, but it births necessities. In the shadow of the armistice, while kings toppled and maps bled red, John Browning dreamed not of peace, but of perpetuity. He'd already etched his name in fire. The 1911 pistol, that slab-sided apostle of American carry. The bar, a light machine gun that whispered death from the Argonne's leaves. But the skies called louder. Balloons, those hydrogen hearts of reconnaissance, floated like taunts above the lines, spotters for artillery that turned earth to paste. Browning's answer? A gun to ground them. Not a pea shooter, but a thunderclap in 50 caliber. Half an inch of lead and spite, born to bridge the gulf between man and machine. Browning, muttering to himself, pencil pausing, eyes distant. Distance is the lie they sell soldiers. Make it close, make it now. His assistant, a young draftsman named Errett Laban, Matt Browning, son shadow, successor, nods from the corner, etching tolerances, headspace .003 inches, no more, no less. Perfection wasn't vanity, it was survival. Tested in wind tunnels and against water-cooled ancestors, the M1921 prototype coughed its first rounds at Sandy, Utah's ranges, punching steel plates at 1,800 yards, the report echoing off the Wasatch like Judgment Day. The Army watched, skeptical. Too heavy for doughboys, too voracious for ammo trains. But Browning saw further. This wasn't for one war. It was for all that followed. The bridge from wood and wire to steel and storm. John Browning died in 1926, mid-design for the Auto 5 shotgun, slumped at a bench in FN Herstal's Belgian forge. But his 50 lived, evolved. The M2, christened in 1933, shed water jackets for air fins, slimmed to HB glory. By Pearl Harbor, it was cannon, mounted on M3 tanks, P-40 Warhawks, even destroyers slicing the Pacific's skin. Not by decree, but by demand. GIs in the Philippines 42, facing Zeros that danced like hornets. The 50 turned cockpits to colanders, incendiary rounds blooming orange in fuel tanks. It wasn't elegant. Barrels overheated after 500 rounds, demanding swaps with asbestos gloves that blistered palms. Links jammed in sand, casings dented in haste. But it endured. Fired 100,000 rounds in tests without fracture. A machine that ate hell and asked for seconds. Foreman, bellowing over the din, to a line of welders. Tighten those mounts. This ain't a toy for the boys overseas, it's their goddamn tomorrow. A welder, hands scarred like maps, arcs MiG to the pintle, the swivel base that let the gun dance on Jeeps, tanks, half-tracks. Across the river in Buffalo, Savage Arms pulses, hydraulic presses, wump-out tripods, M3 variant for AA, lighter at 59 pounds but no less lethal. Engineers tweak, flash hider added in 44 to cloak night fires, chrome bores for Pacific humidity. Not innovation for glory, but iteration for infinity. By D-Day, 2 million belts stockpiled, API, AP, incendiary, ball, color-coded tracers painting doom in green and red. America's genius wasn't genius at all. It was scale. Germany built wonders. The 88mm flak, a howitzer that hunted tanks. The MG42, a buzzsaw at 1200 RPM. But brilliance burns bright and brief. Supply chains snapped by bombers, engineers fleeing Ruhr rubble. The U.S., a colossus of continuity. Rail from Buffalo to San Diego hauled crates unmarked but heavy. 100 guns per flat car, guarded by MPs with Thompsons slung casual. Factories triple-shifted, workers chewing Benzedrine to fight the fatigue, output unmoved by blackout or blizzard. The 50 wasn't one gun. It was legion. Ubiquitous, unkillable. On the USS Enterprise, it crowned carriers like thorns. In B-24 bellies, it armored bombers against the Luftwaffe's Falcons. Colonel exhaling smoke, voice laced with quiet awe. Gentlemen, that's not a weapon. That's a verdict. Reflection. Overlay. Thoughtful. The hum of machinery fading to a pulse. Men design for victory, but machines endure for war itself. Browning's vision was no flash. It was foundation. Steel forged not to conquer, but to persist. In the factory's roar, America didn't arm soldiers. It armed eternity. The 50 cal crossed oceans not as cargo, but as certainty. It rode Shermans into Sicily's dust, 43, Jeeps through Italy's vines, 44. Mechanics in mud-choked depots stripped and reassembled by flashlight, headspace checked with go-no-go gauges, barrels honed on portable lathes. Ammo, belts raveled from silk mills in Paterson, New Jersey, links electroplated in chrome vats that bubbled like witches' cauldrons. By the time Audie Murphy climbed that burning M10, the gun was no novelty. It was native, woven into doctrine, doctrine into destiny. The Germans innovated. STG-44 assault rifles, Me-262 jets that screamed faster than sound. But innovation invites failure. The 50, it invited only echoes. Endurance isn't won in bursts. It's forged in the quiet fire of repetition. The bolt that cycles, the barrel that cools, the link that holds. John Browning didn't build a gun. He built a ghost, one that haunts every shadow soldiers seek. It wasn't built for beauty. It was built to exist, everywhere, forever. In the air war, distance was deity. The Germans owned it once. Messerschmitts slicing through Spitfire packs, Stukas diving like falcons on Dunkirk's beaches. Height, speed, surprise, the triad of the skies, etched in Luftwaffe doctrine by Goering's prophets. But by Schweinfurt Regensburg, the equation inverted. The 8th Air Force came not as raiders, but as reapers. Daylight precision bombing, unescorted at first, a gamble in tin and resolve. And guarding those silver arrows, not angels, but anvils. Turrets bristling with Brownings, 1150 cals per fortress, dorsal, ventral, nose, tail, waist windows framing muzzles like the ports of a floating fortress. One design, multiplied. The death of evasion, inside the cockpit of the all-American lead ship. Leitner Call Arthur Rogers grips the yoke, eyes on the lead navigator's plot. IP inbound, 5 minutes to the target. Below the flight deck, the bombardier's greenhouse glints. Norden sight whirring, crosshairs hungry for ball-bearing plants that grease the panzer tracks. But it's the gunners who breathe the tension. Cut 2. Ball turret, suspended like a steel womb beneath the keel. Sight William McNulty 22, from Brooklyn's tenements, curls fetal in the cramped sphere. 6 feet of space for a 5-foot frame, controls at his elbows, triggers under thumbs. His twin 50s, chin mounts, stare downward through plexiglass smeared with frost. Ammo cans bolted around him, 500 rounds per gun, belts coiled like adders. The intercom crackles. Rogers, over the tinny speakers, calm as a weatherman. Bogies at 11 o'clock high, boys, bandits climbing, gunners, eyes sharp. McNulty, voice muffled, adrenaline sharpening the accent. Copy, Colonel. Let's give 'em the welcome wagon. The horizon fractures, 200 Me-109s and 5190s, the Luftwaffe's wolves, peeling from clouds like shards from a hammer blow. Kammhuber line breached, radar plots lighting up Berlin's screens like Christmas gone wrong. Oberst Adolf Galland, Jagdflieger ace with 70 kills, leads the Schwarm from his cockpit in Richthofen 1. Throttle firewalled, supercharger whining at 20,000 feet. His plan, head-on passes, the Jagdwaffe's signature, converge at 400 miles per hour closing, cannon spitting 20 millimeters and 30 millimeters, then zoom climb away. Americans fold under the Sturm, or so the briefing said. Galland knew the math. Bf 109 G6, 1,475 horsepower Daimler-Benz, top speed 420 miles per hour at altitude, enough to loop the heavies like hounds on hares. But math lies when the quarry bites back. The B-17's box was a killing field. Gunners synced by Aldous lamps and horn signals, overlapping fields of fire turning approach vectors to gauntlets. Each point 50, 600 yards effective, tracers arcing in lazy parabolas that belied their speed, to 900 FPS muzzle velocity, dropping just 10 inches at 500 yards, not snipers. Storm. Lead 109 stoops, wings flashing silver, MG-131s chattering 13 millimeters. Tracers whip past the All-American's nose, stitching the wing root, sparks, no fire. Rogers yanks the stick. The fortress heels, props clawing air. From the waist window, sundered. Leroy Evans traverses his 50, pintle-mounted, flexible like a serpent's neck. Sights pip the bandit at 700 yards. Trigger squeeze, brap, short burst, 10 rounds, incendiary mix blooming red tails. The 109 jinks, but too late. 2 strikes to the canopy, pilot slumping as glycol hisses steam. Evans, yelling into the throat mic, triumph edged with terror, bandit down, 1 splash at 11. The formation tightens, a hedgehog of steel. Dorsal turret, twin 50s, power traversed 360 degrees, elevation 70 up, 50 down. Sajjadar Hank Kowalski, Polish emigre, locks on a 190 diving for the low squadron. The gun coughs, 450 RPM, recoil a gentle rock to the B-17's 30-ton inertia. Tracers lace the sky, green-white veins against the blue. The Focke-Wulf erupts, wing root shears, fuel igniting and a Roman candle tumble. Parachutes bloom, white against black smoke. But the wolves press, 50 heavies commit, cannon fire raking fuselages, 303s from escorts a distant memory. No P-51s yet, just the fort's defiance. Schmidt, urgent, static-laced, Oberst. The Yanks, their walls, pulling off too hot. Galland, grim, banking into the sun. Hold the line, break their boxes, 1 fortress the raid fails. But lines fray. A 109 clips a dorsal turret, the gunner, unnamed, slumps, blood freezing on the sights. Yet the 50s don't falter. Hydraulic boost on power turrets, hand crank backups on the rest. Tail gunner in Memphis Belle, Southern Bob Hansen, tracks a head-on. 800 yards closing, no room for error. His twin M2s roar, brap, brap, slugs punching the 109's nose, propeller shearing like tin foil. The bandit disintegrates mid-pass, debris pattering the Belle's windscreen like lethal hail. Hansen reloads, fingers numb, belts slapping home amid ejected casings that dance on the frozen deck. Schweinfurt was no anomaly. It was apocalypse foretold. The Luftwaffe lost 22 fighters that day, the 8th 60 bombers, 600 men to the cold Atlantic, but the 50s exacted toll. Gunners claimed 288, confirmed 22, the rest ghosts in the statistical fog. Not accuracy. Deflection shooting at 300 miles per hour, convergence was art, not science. Leads walk by tracer glow, Kentucky windage in the void, certainty. The gun's rhythm. Burst, traverse, burst, overheating barrels swap mid-mission, quick change sleeves blistering hands but buying time. Each B-17 a porcupine, quills half-inch thick, turning the bomber stream into a no-fly zone where approach equaled attrition. Hartman, later in interrogation, voice bitter through an interpreter, "Your gunners? Farmers with shotguns, but those guns, they make the sky a cage. No room to breathe, no angle clean." In the cockpit's crucible, courage meets calculus. Pilots chase glory in loops and rolls, but machines reduce it to probabilities. hit chance versus hull integrity, evasion arc versus convergence fire. The 50 didn't duel, it denied, turned the third dimension into a trap where height was no haven, speed, no salvation. German aces like Marseille or Mulders wrote poetry in the air, the Browning wrote prose, endless, unyielding paragraphs of lead. Wider vista, the raid presses on. Flak now joins the fray. 88s from Essen, black puffs blooming like ink and water, shrapnel pinging off armor plate. A fortress takes a direct hit. Wing folding in fire, crew bails, silk blossoms against the pyre. But the box holds. Bomb bays yawn over targets, 500-pounders tumbling in sticks, detonating in symphonies of ruin. Factories crumple, production halved by autumn. Galland, limping back to Jever, tallies the cost. 40% losses, pilots irreplaceable. The Yanks return, week after week, escorts growing. P-38s, P-51s with drop tanks, their own Wing 50 extending the umbrella. By big week, February 44, the Luftwaffe cracks. 600 fighters downed, factories in flames. The 50, uncelebrated, ubiquitous. Top turret on a B-24, shredding a Ju-88 at 1,500 yards. Chin guns on a YB-40 gunship variant, hosing a formation like a fire hose of fate. The air war wasn't won by bombs alone. It was the gunner's war. Men like McNulty, freezing in turrets that spun like dervishes, counting heartbeats between bursts. Casualties ran 75% for waist gunners, frostbite as deadly as flak. Yet they manned the posts because the 50 made them gods. One burst collapsing a bandit's wing, another vaporizing a canopy. German pilots adapted, low-level hits, night harassment. But adaptation was admission. The skies, once their canvas, became contested canvas, then American easel. The Reich's industrial pulse faltered, panzers idled without bearings, the Eastern Front starved of fuel. All from a gun that fired not in anger, but in inevitability. In the air, the 50 cal ruled not by accuracy, but by certainty. D-Day wasn't invasion, it was imposition. 156,000 men, 11,000 aircraft, 7,000 tons of steel, crashing onto 5 beaches like a fist through glass. The Germans waited. Atlantic Wall, Hitler's concrete spine, bunkers burrowed into bluffs, MG-42 nests honeycombed in dunes, 88s peering from casemates like cyclopean eyes. Rommel's calculus, hold the shore, bleed the bridgehead, turn the tide with panzers held in corps de bataille. Mobility was mythos, counterattack at the water's edge, no foothold granted. But as the first Higgins boats grounded on Omaha's shingle, spitting troops into a hurricane of lead, a new variable entered. The 50 cal, mounted not just on Shermans but on half-tracks, even the landing craft themselves. It didn't breach the wall, it erased the spaces between. Spaulding, bellowing over the gale, waving his men forward. Suppress that nest, flank it now, goddammit. Ramirez to himself, trigger finger whitening, for the Alamo, cabron. The 50 awakens. Brap, a guttural bellow that cuts the chatter like a blade through silk. Not the MG-42's frantic buzz, but a deliberate drum, 500 RPM, bursts of 5, tracers lancing red gold through the haze. At 400 yards, the rounds API mix, 700-grain slugs, punch the bunker slit like fists through paper. Concrete chips, the gunner inside jerks, gun falling silent as ricochets whine off rebar. The loader bolts for the rear door, but the second burst finds him. Mid-stride, torso erupting in a mist of Feldgrau and bone. The nest goes dark. Spaulding's platoon surges, grenades arcing like prayers. The beachhead breathes. Normandy was no beach, it was bocage. Hedgerows woven from ancient roots, earth banks 8 feet high, a labyrinth where tanks became tombs and infantry ghosts. The Germans adapted, Panzerfausts from haystacks, Nebelwerfers salving the fields in fire. But the 50 adapted wider. On M3 half-tracks of the 4th Armored Cavalry, it crowned recon troops like a scepter. Elevated on ring mounts, 360-degree traverse turning patrols into predators. Convoys snaked inland, deuce-and-a-halfs laden with 115s, jeeps bouncing foxholes, each with a 50 Ma dose scanning horizons. Range, 2,000 yards effective, but in the close-quarters knife fight of St. Lo, it ruled at 100, shredding sniper perches, hosing ambushes before they sprang. Hines, whispering to his spotter, voice taut. Wart, wait for the lead. One burst, then. But waiting is luxury. The lead jeep's 50 coughs first, ba-da-da-dum, rounds cratering the wall at 600 yards, dust blooming like breath. Hines's MG-34 answers, but the response is symphony. Trailing half-tracks join, 450s converging, a storm of lead that riddles the house. Plaster rains, beams groan. Heinz's spotter slumps, throat open like a second smile. He fires blind, recoil bruising shoulder, but the tracers arc back, inevitable, illuminating his position like a flare. A final burst, the wall caves, burying him in rubble that reeks of cordite and finality. The hedgerows taught terror in increments. Falaise Pocket, August 44. 50,000 Germans trapped in a 20-mile noose, roads choked with burning columns. Panzers like iron pyres, horses screaming in harness. Canadian and Polish armor sealed the east, Americans the west. Convoys became kill zones. 2nd Armored Division's M8 Greyhounds, light scouts with 50s atop, prowling like wolves. No grand charges, just the thud of idling engines, gunners scanning with binoculars, then the sudden roar. A German truck convoy, 12 vehicles, fleeing sane. Oberstleutnant Otto Baum's Kampfgruppe, ammo crates lashed high. They hear it first, the distant cough, echoing off the Norman orchards like a tubercular god. Baum, from his Kübelwagen, urging the driver, Schnell, the gap at Argentan, push through. The lead half-track spots them, 1,500 yards, dust plume a giveaway. Gunner Peter Theo Lang, farm boy from Iowa, doesn't hesitate. Brap, long burst, 50 rounds, AP chewing the roadster's hood. Engine dies in sparks, survivors bail into ditches. Panic chains, the column halts, men piling out, but the 50 doesn't pause, traverses left, hosing the next truck, canvas shredding, fuel igniting in whoops of orange. Bomb dives, pistol drawn, but rounds whip overhead, close enough to sing. His radio man screams, leg pulped at the knee. From the rear, more 50s join, artillery spotters and jeeps, a Sherman lumbering up. The pocket closes not with tanks, but with this chorus. Ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum, rhythmic, overlapping, turning retreat to rout. 10,000 dead, 50,000 captured. Baum, spared by a shallow furrow, whispers in the aftermath, Eswarvi Regan. Endless rain. Piper, in his command half-track, map fluttering in heater's breath. Their fire, it's not aimed, it's everywhere. We advance into a net. Psychological collapse came not in charges, but in the quiet. By the Rhine, March 45, the Wehrmacht was specter. Volkssturm boys with Panzerfausts, officers rationing cigarettes and resolve. Convoys rolled unopposed, 4th Armored from Lorraine to the Elbe, 50s scanning empty roads but firing at shadows, snipers in steeples, holdouts in barns. The sound alone broke them, that deep cough echoing across fields, promising no quarter because it asked none. Mechanics kept the rhythm, in muddy laggers swapping barrels under ponchos, head spacing with feeler gauges by flashlight. Ammo, endless. Liberty ships unloading belts like confetti from hell. 1 gun per vehicle, but in platoon, a battery, 10 to 20 muzzles, 5,000, 10,000 rounds per engagement, turning maneuvers to massacres. War on ground is intimacy, mud shared, breath synced, fear a communal shroud. But the 50 abstracted it. Distance collapsed, cover myth. Germans flanked, withdrew, ambushed, yet the gun followed. Not as hunter, but horizon. It didn't kill more than the 30-06 or 75 millimeters. It killed hope. Tactics, once elegant chess, became checkers against a machine that played by volume, reliable, repetitive, remorseless. In the Ardennes chill, officers like Model or Mentoffel tallied not positions, but echoes. How many 50 bursts before the line cracked? The answer, 1 more than they had. Remagen Bridge, March 7. The Ludendorff spans the Rhine, a steel ribbon to freedom, or trap. Sipter Karl Timmermann's K Company 27th Infantry seizes it intact. Engineers rigging charges too slow. Germans counter, 88s from the East Bank, infantry swarming the girders. But Shermans roll up, 50s hosing the approaches, tracers arcing over the water like accusatory fingers, shredding assault boats mid-river, turning the crossing to charnel. A Wehrmacht private, anonymous in the flood, swims for the span, reaches the abutment, claws up. The nearest 50 traverses, brap. 3 rounds, close enough to feel the wind. He slips back, current claiming him. The bridge holds. The Reich fractures. In the forests and fields of Europe, the gun became a heartbeat that never stopped. Victory in 45 was no coda, it was comma. The 50 cal, that Utah forged constant, didn't sheath in peace, it sharpened. From the ash of Nagasaki to the atolls of Tarawa's echo, it crossed the dateline. Mounted on P-61 Black Widows prowling Tokyo's ruins, on PT boats slicing the Yangtze's fog. Marines on Iwo Jima's black sand, where 26,000 fell in 36 days, clung to M2s on tripods, hosing caves that belched fire. Not for glory, but geometry. 1,800 yards of denial, turning suicidal banzai charges into broken waves. Sartor John Bass alone, Medal of Honor twice earned, fed belts into the maw until his arms smoked, the guns brap a mantra against the night. Japan surrendered on the Missouri's deck, September 2, but the 50 stayed vigilant, crowning the battleship's towers like iron laurels. The gun's immortality wasn't accident, it was axiom. Post-war, Aberdeen's engineers circled it like priests a relic, barrel profiles tweaked for quick change. A&M-2 aircraft variant, lighter at 61 pounds, feeding from boxes that rattled like dice in B-29 bellies. Vietnam called next. 65, Da Nang's airstrip, Marines offloading crates from C-130s, the thud of pallets echoing over rice paddies. Jungle green, not Europe's khaki, but the same steel. On riverine patrols, PBRs sliced the Mekong, twin 50s forward, twin aft gunners in flak vests, scanning for sampans rigged with RPGs. Gunner, anonymous in a Fallujah after-action voice gravel from dust. She don't quit, you do. Heat, rain, whatever, pull the trigger, she speaks. Reflection, overlay, the plink of a distant casing echoing across decades. Machines accrue myths like patina on bronze. The 50 isn't hero or horror, it's horizon. Soldiers name it, Medusa the 50, that old bitch who won't die. In the Pacific it shredded zero wings. Korea, it froze Chinese boots to ice. Vietnam, it turned jungles to sieves. Desert Storm, it laughed at thermals. By 2025, drones hum over Yemen's wadis, but the M2 persists. On MRAPs in Somalia, JLTVs patrolling Ukraine's mud, even Space Force testbeds guarding silos. Upgrades whisper, smart links with RFID for ammo count, but the action? Short recoil, gas piston reliable as gravity. Over 3 million produced, 100-plus countries armed. From Israel's Merkavas to Ukraine's Bradleys, where volunteers feed belts against Russian columns echoing the Eastern Front's ghosts. It's no longer American alone. It's archetype, the weapon that outlasts wars because it outlasts men. Symbolism seeps from the barrel like gun oil. Reliability as religion. Germans in 44 saw tactics fail. Blitzkrieg's poetry drowned in volumes prose. The 50 proved it, you can't flank a fact. In Hue, VC sappers whispered of the American thunder that pierced walls. In Fallujah, jihadis cursed the eternal gun that turned alleys to kill sacks. Lesson? Not in bursts but silences. The pause after the last brap when the field falls still but safety feels stolen. Factories hum on, Buffalo's lines, now robotic arms welding receivers from titanium alloys, output $5,000 a year for allies. Cost $14,000 per, but priceless in the ledger of deterrence. Museums cradle veterans. The Smithsonian's M2 from Murphy's M10, pitted and proud. London's Imperial War Museum's Pacific relic, salt-eaten but unbowed. But most? Still serving, on Philippine Coast Guards chasing Chinese junks, or Australian F-35s testing high-altitude mounts. Advisor to the sergeant, voice low, sharing a smoke. Treat her right, she'll outlive us all. Seen it from Normandy to here. The sergeant, eyes on the horizon, replies in broken English. Sergeant, no escape, yes, like old stories. Montage finale. Crossfade through time-lapse echoes. Casings tumble in slow motion. From Holtzwir's snow to Fallujah's sand, brass glinting eternal. Tracer's arc, green-white over the Ruhr, red-gold in the Mekong, invisible now in night vision feeds. Factory hum swells, Detroit 43 to Shenzhen 25, hammers falling like heartbeats. Silence descends, a battlefield, any battlefield, post-burst. Wind stirs the spent links, but the quiet? Fraught. As if the gun waits just beyond sight. Perfection wins battles. The 88mm scream, the Sage 44's bite. But endurance wins wars. The 50 cal didn't chase soldiers, it erased their options. You can't outfight a machine that never fails. For the Germans, it was the death of distance, the cage of inevitability. For history, a mirror. Wars evolve, but the constants remain. Steel that speaks when men falter, rhythm that outpaces resolve. It ruled every battlefield not by wrath but witness, a quiet decree that some designs defy obsolescence, some echoes refuse the grave. The Germans couldn't escape it, and history never will. If you believe the machines that shaped history deserve their story told, subscribe for more untold World War II brilliance.